process is you write a letter to the Pope to be dispensed from the vows. And it was Pope John Paul at the time. So I wrote a Dear John letter.
So you left the convent together, you decided?
We left the convent together. We had nothing. In 1990, it did not feel safe to be out. We were together for 23 years before it was legal to get married. You know, every Sunday night we'd go to a meeting where I went to the AA meeting, she went to the Al-Anon meeting. It's really nice to have you here.
Oh, it's so great to be here with you. So I'm here with Bonnie. We are friends from Barbara Brennan.
Yes, we are classmates.
Classmates, and we were just talking about the dirt.
You want to get right to the dirt.
I want to get right to the dirt. I love what you just said.
What?
Everybody wants to know.
Oh, so, well, my story is that I was in the convent for 22 years. And while I was in the convent, I met Terry, who was about just a little younger than me. We were friends and colleagues. We worked together. We were both principals. We, you know, had all the administrative meetings and all that kind of stuff that we would go to together. We worked, we just had a lot in common, and we worked a lot to make, and we were both really committed to being in religious life. Until death do you part.
As nuns.
As nuns, that's right. But we, you know, and we had a lot of fun together. And what happened is that we started to share more with each other. The hard stuff, you know, like you know, our childhood, the hard stuff from childhood. She had physical abuse and emotional abuse, and I had sexual abuse. And we talked about all of those things, and we talked about how we're trying to deal with them. And I then ended up realizing that I was an alcoholic. I used alcohol to cope with all that. The convent wasn't really helping me much with those things.
I'm curious. Yeah, I was curious. How do you manage being an alcoholic while being at a convent?
Well, there's altar wine, which is stereotypical, but yes, in the convent, in the local community where, you know, maybe 6 or 8 of us would live together, y'all had chores, right? Different chores, and I would volunteer to be the grocery shopper, and I was in Iowa, and in Iowa you could buy wine and beer and not hard liquor in a grocery store. Oh. So I, being very thoughtful, would make sure that I had enough wine, bought enough for the other sisters to have. And then I usually drank most of it after, you know, alone. And but I made sure there was some, so I could help supply myself that way. But
did anyone catch on?
I don't. Well, yes, one young nun did, Mary Kay. She was like, "What's wrong with you?" And she was a music teacher. And on a particular Christmas Eve, she was a perfectionist, and we were supposed to sing at the midnight mass. And I have a good voice, and so I was supposed to sing solos, some of the solos and there was a few other people singing, and Mary Kay played the guitar. And I had been, all afternoon on Christmas Eve was clean the house day. My job was to clean the kitchen. I was cleaning the kitchen and having a little bit of wine while I did, and a little bit more, and a little bit more. And I often joke because I thought, well, I should eat. This is alcoholic thinking.
Okay.
I should eat something. You're not supposed to drink on an empty stomach. So I found a can of oyster stew.
Oh.
This is not how you think. Oyster stew and wine. And so I would have, the wine would was gone, and there was still some stew, so I'd pour another glass of wine. Then the stew was gone, and the wine was, so I'd have some more of that, and the whole afternoon I drank. So I ended up going down to the church to sing drunk. And when we were warming up, Mary Kay says to me, "Have you been drinking?" And I said, "Yes." And so she was so disgusted with me, but she had been the one that enabled me the most, because, I'd drink and I'd feel bad, and I'd wake up in the morning and I'd tell her that I felt really, I'd be hungover, but I also felt really bad about all this remorse, because I didn't want to be drinking. But it was a coping thing. It was how I coped with a lot of emotion that didn't have a place to go, because I was supposed to be just right. And so anyway.
So Terry was...
So Terry, when I went to treatment, eventually I went, after that that incident,
Okay.
I asked the director of our community for help. And she said, "We'll take you to treatment." And so the next day they loaded me up in the car and took me to treatment. And and when I left treatment, Terry, who was coping with having grown up as the child of an alcoholic and a really mentally ill mother, she said, "I'll go to Al-Anon for you." But it was really kind of getting it all together. All of it made sense for her. So she went. She hadn't done any of that 12-step stuff, but she started then. So we would go to every Sunday night we'd go to a meeting where I went to the AA meeting, she went to the Al-Anon meeting, and we shared a lot. And we got closer and closer, and sharing all that stuff, we just loved to be together and talk and
fell in love.
wanted to be. And at one point she says to me, we read books. We read a lot of books and read and talked about them together. At one point she said to me, I was talking about somehow feeling attracted to some other person, right? And she said, "Do you ever feel that way about me?"
Aww.
And I was like, "Oh, huh?" I was clueless.
Did you think you were straight at that point?
I had no idea.
You-
I had no idea. I didn't even know what lesbian was. And I just knew that I didn't want to be around men. Convent was a great place to just leave. All I thought about them was, they only want one thing, and I'm not giving it to them. And that was my image. So we talked more and more, and I often say, we talked and talked and talked, and we talked ourselves right out of the convent. Because what happened is I wanted to be around her all the time, and then we found opportunities to actually be physically together. And I had never had that, ever. And
When did you decide you were in love?
when I missed her so much, when she wasn't there. And we tried to find ways to be together. Like we'd sign up for conferences and things that we would have to drive to, and we drive and have that time together, and maybe stop at a motel on the way. It was so we could just be
Still in the
together.
convent at this point?
Still in the convent,
Okay.
yes. But it was mostly emotional connecting, and but you know what love does? The hormones just lit up, and I'm sure everybody couldn't figure out why I was so happy. But one time we were coming home in the car from someplace, and Terry says to me, "Do you ever dream?" And I said, "Well, yeah, but I don't remember them." And she said, "I don't mean that kind of dream." She said, "I dream of growing old with you, sitting on the front porch watching each other wrinkle."
Aww.
And I was, once again, it's like, what? What? Is that possible? could we do that? You know, I was clueless. I think I had chosen misery as my lifelong companion.
Wow.
And I thought, you know, what better way to do it than being in the convent and God will take care of me or whatever. And it was miserable. And Terry's love, and the love between us just gave me life.
Wow.
And so from that moment, we started thinking about how we would, you know, how and when we would leave together.
And what year was that around?
1990.
Wow.
We left in this time of year, 1990.
So you were in the Midwest.
We were in Dubuque, and we moved to the Twin Cities. Terry got a job at Hazelden as a counselor, like a pastoral minister for the patients that were there in the treatment center. And yeah.
So you left the convent together, you decided?
We left the convent together.
Wow.
We had nothing. Nothing. You know, there was no, we had just, not even Social Security, not even, like, I asked for a Social Security estimate, you know, like in those first couple years. I was 40 years old when we left. Terry was 39. And the Social Security would have been like $7.21 a month.
Wow.
It was like,
Wow.
yeah. Yeah.
So when you leave the convent, they're not taking care of you.
No, they let you keep your last paycheck, but granted, in the convent, the paychecks, I never saw a paycheck. It was all contracted with the archdiocese to pay us a certain amount, which was, when I started teaching in 1971 as a teacher, was $2,100. I think for the whole year.
Wow.
And so it was minimal.
Yeah.
And so that went up, you know, a little bit every year. But by the time I left, I was a principal, and I believe that might have been $12,000 for a salary for the whole year. But you never get your own paycheck. So I had no accounts, no anything. And what was interesting about that was, we not only had no money, but we had nothing. You know, it's not like, you know, you can bring your stuff with you, like, I don't know, kitchen utensil, clothes. I wore a habit. No clothes, right? Just
Wow.
had to buy everything, right? Starting from scratch. And so I thought, well, a credit card, I need a credit card. And I can get some stuff with that and build it up. So I went to see if whatever the Discover card is now, back then it had a different name. And I tried to get one of those, and filling out the paper, this pittance of income. I didn't even have a job yet. So they're like, well, no, sorry, we can't give you this card. And so then I'm at the Sears store, which is where Discover cards were originated. And they said, well, you can maybe get a store card. So I filled out the paperwork for the store card, handed it to the guy at the desk. I'm still in the convent. I'm not out yet. I'm just getting ready to go and needing to plan. And the guy says, well, don't you have, you know, I didn't have income. My income, if I put down $12,000, that was it. And I didn't have, like loan history. Oh, I'm sorry I did that.
That's okay.
I didn't have loan history. So they couldn't, you know, qualify me. And so he says to me, well, don't you even have a car loan? I say, no. Well, nothing? You haven't got, what planet have you been on? And
He said that?
He said that.
Wow.
And I said, because I wasn't wearing a habit, so he couldn't tell I was a nun. So I said, I've been in the convent. And he was turned like sheets of red. And it's like, oh, I'm so sorry.
So tell me, what's the process for leaving the convent? Like, did you just leave, or you had to sign out, or?
I stayed until, like, we decided in November, December that we were leaving.
Okay.
And I stayed until June because I didn't want to not finish my contract for the year.
Oh.
And so we both stayed until June. And then but the process is you write a letter to the Pope.
Wow.
And it was Pope John Paul at the time. So I wrote a Dear John letter.
I love that.
Yeah, it was, it's to be dispensed from the vows. The vows were poverty, chastity, and obedience.
Wow.
And to be dispensed from those was not a light thing.
Wow.
And so I had to write 3 copies of it. One went right to him, and one went to his guy, and one went to the guy here in this country or whatever.
And what feelings were happening for you at the time? Because here you're in love with a woman and asking the Pope
Yes.
to leave.
So I didn't use that as the reason,
Okay.
but I did use the fact that I was so miserably depressed, and that suicidally depressed. I was really depressed in the convent. And that I realized, at this point I realized that I think I had chosen to go to the convent as a reaction to having been sexually abused. Right? It was a refuge. And I realized that. And so it's like, I could write, I chose to come here for the wrong reasons. And I can tell it isn't right because I'm so depressed. And so, that was kind of what I wrote.
Can they refuse you?
I don't know why they would, but they don't make it easy. I mean, they just didn't want people.
Yeah. But by that point, it sounds like you would have been past any guilt or shame for leaving the convent.
I did not have guilt or shame for leaving the convent. That was one thing I did not have because I was moving towards something beautiful. And it was life. Terry and I went to retreats and workshops on discernment and all kinds of things for months in that time between, trying to just decide what do we do? What do we do about this?
Like how
do
balance
other nuns balance relationships like this and still be happily there?
Was there a precedent?
Yeah. There were other women who had left the convent and we found books. My goodness. Terry went to the Loyola Library and we found books about lesbians all over the country, like couples that had been living together for, 50 years. It's like, I had no idea.
You didn't know that even existed.
In 1990, having been in the convent for 20 years, I hadn't a clue. And so that was like eye-opening for one thing. But we prayed. I prayed and tried to ask for guidance. And one day I was reading in the scripture, and it was, I don't remember if it's Isaiah or Deuteronomy, but it's the line that says, God says to his people, I set before you life and death. Choose life. And at that point, it was so clear to me that convent was depression and wanting to be dead. I literally wanted to be dead. I wanted it like, I have a pain in my chest. Maybe it's something really serious and I'll die. I just wanted to be dead.
Wow, you're giving me chills, Bonnie. That's amazing.
And
Can you repeat that? the life and death thing?
The line in the scripture is, I set before you life and death. Choose life. And it's an Old Testament thing. And that totally was clear to me that this was a choice between this life that I was feeling in being in love with Terry, right? I just felt buoyant. Well, young love. And although I was 39. And that wanting to be dead. It was so clearly saying, choose life. And it was clear to me that was what the Spirit was leading me to. And it would be, so the guilt part, it would have been wrong, sinful not to choose it. To me, I was choosing what God was guiding me to.
That's so beautiful.
And yet I wanted to be respectful of the convent in my leaving, and I didn't want to make, some people would have to make it about some big thing that's wrong with the convent to leave. And it wasn't like that for me. It was totally here. And
It sounds like it was in alignment with your beliefs because you were following Scripture.
I was, and I feel like that was really divine guidance. And there was peace from that moment on. I was peaceful about the choice, and didn't have any feeling guilty about it at all.
So you and Terry have officially been together since 1990, it sounds like. And so after the convent, you built your lives, you both got jobs, you lived together. Were you living openly as a gay couple?
Well, one of the reasons we came up to the Twin Cities was big city and anonymity. You don't, because we both grew up in small towns where everybody knows everybody's business, right? And it did not feel safe. In 1990, it did not feel safe to be out. People weren't out. It was before Ellen came out. It was, and the ideas about gay people were, there's something wrong with them, right? And AIDS was a big deal, so the actual gay community was in the throes of that. And so it was really not. But the Twin Cities was very liberal. And there was a newspaper column by a lesbian woman who wrote like Irma Bombeck about all these escapades with her wife. Well, they weren't wife. You couldn't be married then either. There was no such thing. But about her partner and just their household things, And we read that every week when that came out in the paper. We read that like, oh my goodness, there's more people. It's like,
there's more of us.
Yes, there's more of us. And there was a group called Women Works up here in the Twin Cities, which was kind of a social, professional women who were all lesbian, who had a social group. They'd have dances and breakfasts and all that kind of stuff. That we would go to, and it was amazing to be in a crowd of women who love women and just dancing your fool head off and happy.
Beautiful.
And seeing these people who, they're professional women, they're not hiding and embarrassed or ashamed.
Being with Terry, having gone through this incredible life together, what are some things that and I'm sure as every relationship does, you had your things to work through. What are some things you learned about love and about relationship? Well,
what I learned is that it seemed to me like the best relationships, marriages, start as friendships. And I married my best friend. We were together for 23 years before it was legal to get married. And on the first day that we could, we did.
And what date was that?
August 1st, 2013.
Beautiful.
And, but what I learned is that I could be loved. I didn't know that I could be loved. I learned how to love myself from the love she gave me. And I think I did the same for her.
Wow.
And I say this, she saved my life because I really did want to be dead. I'm sure my body would have found a way to get really sick and die. So to be loved and to love someone enough to engage in life, and we did everything. We started from scratch. Like I said, we had nothing, no sheets, no towels, no silverware, no spices in the cupboard, no cupboard, no. So we had to start right off from nothing. My family brought curtains and an old stool and a chair that had been painted 5 times, and silverware and bowls. I still use bowls that I grew up with as a kid.
Aww.
Because my parents wanted to help. They did not know that we were lesbian. They probably didn't know there was such a thing either, although it was starting to be on, you know, Good Morning America or whatever they called it, those kinds of things, a little bit then, but to them we were roommates. Coming out to them was one of the hardest things that I did.
But you did.
We did. In like 1993. We were 3 years together. And that was really hard. My parents are Catholic. And they were like, well, you know this is wrong, and you just have to not act on it. And yeah, it was pretty hard. So much so, and the church itself was really not supportive. So we stopped going to church, which was even worse to my parents. But that's a whole other story.
Well, no, I was going to ask you if you kept your faith together, because it sounds like you had a really strong, solid faith, both of you.
My faith is, so I was in AA for all that time, right? I've been 46 years now. And AA is not a religion.
Right.
But it is a spiritual program that says I'm not God and I need a higher power to help me. And so my faith was in, I don't know, I don't know exactly this higher power, but I know it's not the notion I grew up with. And but the church seemed, I felt like I outgrew the church. Didn't have room for us. So we stopped going to church, and my faith really, right before I started going to the Brennan School, I heard the phrase that we're all spiritual beings having a human experience. I had never heard that before, but that kind of framed everything for me. It's like, yes, I get that. And it's so much of what I learned in the Christian Catholic faith that was all about, you just have one life, you better live it right, and then because when you die, you're going to go to heaven and it's over, or hell. And this changed all that for me, and so my faith really, as I was at Brennan, I explored that. Who is this? How do I relate to the divine, and how do I name this presence? And
it sounds like AA gave you a smooth transition from Catholicism into your own developing faith. Can I ask, what, besides the outside world not being supportive of your relationship, what were some of the hurdles that you faced as a couple, and how did what was your method for working through those?
Well, coming out to our parents was a big hurdle, right? And we managed to do that, and for a while before we came out, even my mom was just very critical. Terry's mom was very critical too. We kind of had that in common, but there was it was just kind of toxic to go home, visit the folks. And so we decided, but we still want to be there for them. We want to help them. They're getting old. They need help with their house, with going to the whatever. And so we would make a plan we had to drive. The drive to my family's house is like 3.5 hours. We would, instead of going down for a weekend, we would drive down in the morning, visit, go to supper with them or something, and then drive home, even if we had to stay at a hotel on the way home. And that was really hard for them to take. What, you're not staying? No. But, I kind of had an E.F. Hutton moment with my mom at one point. When I told her, Mom, we're going to leave now, and she was like, well, you're not, and she said, well, I suppose then I'm just not going to come to your house either. And I said, well, Mom, you have to live your life, and I have to live mine. And I tried to be really kind about all that, but that was tough.
Yeah.
And I think, over all the years since that time, which was like 35 years total, they came to respect the love we had and the relationship we had. Even, and of course, probably they were learning a little more about it with just social things, but they came to respect us, even if they didn't accept that we weren't like married. And that this is just not right, you know.
Yeah.
But they respected
opened up a
us.
little, it
They
sounds
did.
like.
They came.
Yeah.
They kind of made their own peace with it.
Yeah.
So that was a big hurdle. The other hurdle was working in the public schools in a time when parents were just starting, really, but getting vocal about, oh, you know, you're not supposed to teach them about teach kids about this because, you know, they'll think that.
It's going to turn them gay.
And, well, we were afraid about that. But it was all about religion, you know, and they'll stop respecting Jesus or something if you teaching that. But I was a counselor, a school counselor, so I would have kids in my office crying and whatever, and you'd close the door, and it made me scared that some parent would say, "What? She's lesbian, and my daughter is in that office with her," you know.
Right.
And that never happened. But there was always the fear. There was
Yeah.
always the fear of that. And so we made plans. We saved, we were each earning a salary, and we saved half of what we earned so that we could retire early or leave that. And we did.
Wow.
Yeah.
It sounds like you were each other's refuge.
We were. We were, and we did everything together. Everything we did together. We even after we quit working as counselors in the public schools, we started teaching adults in the public schools. We were staff trainers in cultural awareness. So,
Wow.
which that was good too. But even being, you know, how can I be out at work? When Terry got sick, I was still working in the public school, counselor, and it was January when she felt something, you know, pain, a lot of pain in her mouth, and she ended up having a biopsy, and I was at work when she got the results from the doctor. The doctor called her and said this was cancer in her tongue. And she called me. And I wanted to go home right then, and so my principal said I could, and she was a good principal. And I went home, and then there were lots of doctor's appointments. And so I was taking her to the doctor, to the clinic, to all these things back and forth. And that was sick days, right? So the whole thing about, you know, you can only have family illness, sick days, you know, family leave. For family, which was parents and children, maybe grandparents.
Or spouses, right?
And spouses, and
Right.
then we were not married. So I put down on my paperwork that, you know, I was absent because I was taking care of my spouse, which of course they have all my employment information, and they know I'm not married. So that was rejected. I got the paper back. I'm in this middle of this terrible stress about Terry's illness, and I get this paperwork back from the administration saying, well, you know, you can't take those days. Well, I already took them, but we can't count that as family leave. We have to deduct your pay.
Oh, wow.
And I got really upset about that. And I made an appointment and went over to see the administrator, the finance guy. And I cried in his office, telling him, you know, look, if anybody's family, she's family to me. We live together. We have this shared accounts. We have, you know, same house. Our life is as married as it can be, except they won't let us get married. And he's like, well, I can't change the state laws, and we have to follow the laws. And he was very
Rigid.
financial guy like. And so I was just fuming after I was angry. I cry when I'm angry. So I was crying and fuming, and I came back to the school And I went in to see my principal because I was in no shape to continue for the day.
Yeah.
And I went to see her and I told her what happened. And she said, "Oh, you should have asked me. I would have just given you comp time." You know, it's like, you know, there was that
Yeah.
and there was that.
Yeah.
And that was, you know, you talk about what are some of the hardships. Those were the hard things.
And was Terry's illness what led you both to join the Barbara Brennan School of Healing?
It was actually, we were working with a healer online, which was not a Brennan healer, but working with, just we were always trying to work on relating and
Did she go into
self-improvement.
remission at one point?
Well, I don't know if you called it remission, but she would go back every month, 2 months, 6 months for checkups, and the doctor would just keep monitoring it. Say, you know, there's some spots here on your tongue, but I don't think they're cancerous. We'll keep watching. And it was that watch, which made it always on your mind, right? Whenever there was something hurting on her tongue, she's like, "Oh, I wonder," and that was a bother all the time. But there were stretches of time. That was like in 2001 that she first found that. And over a period of 20 some years, she had like 4 surgeries where biopsies, you'd get biopsies all the time, and then if it looked positive, they'd take a chunk of her tongue. But
That must
not
have been
really.
nerve-wracking for you. Those,
Was all the time,
Yeah.
and I took care of her, I took her to appointments and all that. But yeah, it was
and then you joined the Brennan School in 2020?
2020. It was COVID time, but Terry's the one who got us to go there. She, I think she hoped that she could find healing for her tongue. That was her hope. And this seemed like a promising thing. And so we kind of always did everything together. So I thought, if you're going, I'm going. So we were both in it. And it was COVID, so we could do it remote, which was good. We wouldn't have been able to afford flying to Miami all the time for class. So, yeah, and by that time we had quit our work, and COVID kind of shut it down. So
So it was prime
it was
time.
prime time. It was kind of like, well, now we're finally retired. But then we started 4-year school, right?
Yeah, so what were some of the biggest learnings from Brennan and then,
Well, for me personally,
yeah,
the work at Brennan is so deeply, you dig deep, right? You need to find where your wounds are and how to heal in order to be a healer for anyone else. And so, and I have always been genuine, sincere, earnest in trying to understand my own self. And so what I faced was, one of the things was, how do I think about God in the divine? How do I relate? How do I want to be as a spiritual person? But a big part of it was healing from the sexual abuse. Looking back to the wounding as a child and how that affected me, you know, how I, as Donna calls them, our teacher, creative solutions to things that happen. How I created this facade of being, you know, perfect and just right, and convent fit that nicely. And
spiritual bypass, right?
yes, and so facing up to that, you know, taking away the mask and looking, seeing myself and being honest about what that was, and realizing how much shame I had my whole life. I carried shame from that abuse, like it was my fault. My whole life. And as a kid at that age, you know, in the 50s, I couldn't tell anybody. I told no one. There wasn't anybody there to say, "Oh, that's not your fault." It was my fault in my head. And the church said, you know, anything sexual is like you're going to go to hell. And I just felt like that was totally my... That's why I started drinking as a teenager, just to escape from that.
And so how did that turn around for you during your studies at Brennan?
I found time after time after time, especially through my journaling and what I call meditation, but it connecting with my spiritual self. I call her Maggie.
Yeah, I remember that.
She's the part of me that isn't in this human body. She's there.
I can feel her.
Yes. And she's so magnificent. I call her Maggie. But I connected with Maggie a lot and listened to guidance and felt a lot of direction that gave me insight. And I wrote. I journaled. At one point, I realized that it felt like I was writing. When I journaled, it felt like I was writing for an audience. And I thought, well, who is this? Like somebody needed to hear this. It was deep processing about longings and shame and fear and guilt. And I thought there's somebody who needs to hear this. And that's when I started to think I should publish some of those writings. But it became... This is the interesting part. When I was pretty sure I needed to publish my writings. I have like 7 volumes of notebooks of them. You know, you've read them. But I felt like I need to publish that because there are someone or many someones who can identify with this processing of all of that from childhood and the inner shame and how do you overcome that and all that. And so when Terry died, a year and a half ago, I was totally unprepared for the grief. I had no idea. I had no clue. I never visioned living life without her. She was like my left hand, right hand, whatever. And I had some really hard days. I still do have some hard days with the grief. And I found days when I think, why am I still here? You know, a lot of... And on some of those days, I pick up what I wrote. I think what I'm journaling now sounds like what I wrote 2 years ago. Like, where is that? And I pulled it out and opened the book and I read what I wrote 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. And it's like I was writing it for me.
Oh, wow.
I was writing it for me.
Wow.
There's probably plenty of other people that will benefit from it, but it has been, and now that happens a lot. I will think, this sounds like the same kinds of things I was saying then, and I go find it, and there's the guidance, the process, the insight that I had then, and it speaks to me now.
I can really feel the energy of that. So it sounds like before Terry died, you wrote these volumes so that after she died, you could comfort yourself with what you wrote.
That turns out to be the way it was.
Wow. Wow.
I've been writing, journaling is helping me with this grief process. And I'm pretty sure I've got a book or 2 of just writings on grieving.
How is it now, a year and a half after?
I still have plenty of days when it's hard to make myself do anything. When I wonder why I'm still here, and I know I'm still here for a reason. Maybe it's to publish this stuff, but there are days when all I do is cry. And I think, oh, I need to go out there and take care of that garden, or I need to whatever. I'll do that tomorrow. And tomorrow comes, it's like, no, not today. And there are plenty of days like that. But I have really good friends.
That's important.
Good neighbors, and a good BIP, my
Brennan, integrated practitioner.
Yes, my healer that I see every week. So that's really helpful. And like I say, the journaling just helps me process the whole thing.
Do you feel that you're in communication with Terry?
I talk to her all the time. And even just like the last couple of days, I was that whole thing. I should get out there and do that. Well, it's too hot, or I should go walk. No, I can't. It's too cold, too hot, too rainy, too something. Many excuses, but no reasons. And so I'm thinking I need to get out there. I need to prune the tomato. I need to, take care of that thing that's in the garden. And I can see it from the window. I see it needs to be done. And if you do it in time, it's not so much work. And I put it off and I put it off. And yesterday, I was looking out the window and there was a rabbit in there. And I thought, that can't be. How did you get inside the fence? I felt like Mr. McGregor. So I went out on the deck and down the steps to see if I could see where this rabbit's going to escape and fix the hole, which I didn't see. But now that I was down there, I saw that, well, I can go over there and see if there's tomatoes on that vine. And then there were some weeds to pull. And then and I ended up doing all that stuff I needed to do because of the rabbit. And I'm pretty sure that was Terry that was
Terry the rabbit.
Or she put it there for me. And things like that happen all the time.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the mower needed to be, I've been paying a kid to mow the lawn, but his mower broke. And I can mow a lawn. I just needed to do it, right? So I was out mowing. I got the lawn mowed last week one day. I mowed the whole thing. But it was not mowing well. And I thought, this mower needs sharpened blades. But Terry was the one who always took care of the mower and took care of all that, knew what to do. She had all the right torque wrenches and everything.
She also flew a plane, right?
She also flew a plane.
She was amazing.
Yes, and so I thought, well, maybe I stopped at the hardware store where Rosie is the check person. What do you call that?
Cashier.
Yes. She's there, and she would always talk to Terry and I when we'd go in and buy stuff, and she talked to us about encouraging us about being a couple, and we told her we were getting married and all that, and she was always encouraging us. And she has a daughter that's lesbian and was thinking about getting married or whatever. And so when I went in this time, I stopped by, I was just driving by, I stopped by, I thought I'll ask them if they sharpen mower blades. That's a starting place. And I saw Rosie and she gave me this big hug, and she asked about how things were going, and I told her, since Terry died, and she was like, oh, did I know that? And she was so supportive. And but I found out that, yes, they'll sharpen them if I take the blades off. So I came home and I thought, well, I'll just see if I can find the right wrench. So I found the right wrench, and then I'll see if I can move it, And I did, and I got the blades to come off, and I thought, well, that's pretty good. I can take them in, and I left it at that. And the next day, when I went out to take care of garbage, putting out garbage, I saw that mower sitting there, and I thought, I wonder if I can sharpen those myself. And so I have a sharpener thing, and so I worked on sharpening them and cleaning it all out, and spent a lot of time in a hot garage working on the mower.
Wow.
And got it sharpened and thought, okay, I'll put it together tomorrow. And then I thought, well, let me just see. And so I just kept on doing stuff until the mower got all put back together, and I think it works. I haven't tried it yet. And I hope it will cut better, because it sure wasn't cutting the grass very well. But once again, it was like, that's like a presence of Terry.
Just sort of keep
Yeah,
going,
you can-
keep going,
yeah,
you can do it, you
yeah.
can do it. That's very sweet, like she was holding your hand.
Yes, and saying, yeah, you're doing it right. That's the right thing, Bon.
I wanted to ask you, Bonnie, if you could share with viewers who might be struggling with coming out, or who might be struggling with religion or healing. You know, you've been through a huge healing journey, which we just barely touched on. So, and you were a counselor, so
I was a counselor.
have a lot to share.
You think there'd be a lot of wisdom to share.
There is.
I think probably the most important thing is to be in touch with your heart, listen, and be true to that. Other people's opinions, other people's religion, other people's cultural norms aren't that important. We're not made for that. There are millions of strong women who have gone before us, who've bled into this earth and survived and come out stronger. And they're now, free, right? These ancestors, they're free of this time and space. And this box that we live in of time and space is just a box. We're way, way, way bigger than that. And in this box are all those expectations and the limits of our mind and how far we can understand and know. And it's just putting it into perspective. What other people think of me is really none of my business.
Yeah, I remember that. That was a big Al-Anon slogan.
Yeah, yep.
To quote another Al-Anon slogan, how does one detach with love? Because, I understand about stepping away from expectations of others, and how do we stay connected at the same time?
Well, that's kindness. We don't have to be mean and nasty to each other just to assert ourselves. And I think that there's a way to be kind even in telling the person on the phone that I don't want to buy their whatever, right? I don't have to be mean and nasty. I can say thank you, but I don't need that right now. Have a good day, And that's just a teeny example, but I think kindness and compassion. Everybody's got their own story. We'll say story, but everybody's got their own stuff to deal with, and their own limited understanding. And just not to say that mine's any greater, it's just different. And compassion goes a long way. Thank you for giving me a chance.
Yeah, we'll pick this up again.
Okay.
I feel like there's so many places we could have gone deeper.
We could be here all day,
Yeah.
and you would miss your plane.
Thank you so much, Bonnie.
You're
This
welcome.
was great. So great to be with you.